Good morning. What counts as a map? Contemporary scholars embrace Brian Harley and David Woodward's definition of maps as graphic representations that facilitate spatial understandings of conditions, processes, or events in the human world. The Hereford on the left depicts a 13th century medieval world, shown together with the right anatomy diagram from the 18th century French Enlightenment L'Encyclopédie. These images resonate histories of human and non-human worlds. On the left, the Hereford inscribes mythical beasts and strange races nearing the map's periphery, recalling Roman Empire's appropriation of pagan roots and dispersal of unified Christian belief. Likewise, Enlightenment diagrams inscribe limits of flesh and interior that naturalize social hierarchies of Western nationalism, empire, whiteness, and otherness. In a few minutes, I use contemporary artist maps to critique human conditions of difference established through Western divisions into social classes as well as between orientation and cognition. Medieval mappamundi, also cloths or charts of the world, depict boundaries not only between human and divine worlds, but also between human and non-human bodies. The Psalter map orients the world with east at the top and England at the lower left. At the far right side, the Nile partitions mythic strange races from marvels or wonders of the East. These tales represent peoples described by non-Christian writers and distorted through Western travel narratives of Europeans gone abroad to Babylon, Persia, Egypt, and India. This image shows the original Hereford map. It consists of a circle drawn onto a single sheet of vellum over 5 feet in diameter, whose pentagonal shape reflects the once living calfskin vellum. The Hereford map depicts strange races and mythical bestiaries at the edges of the known inhabited earth. The map shows Ethiopians, Jews, and Mohammed next to unicorns, cannibals, and androgynes and hybrid creatures, from Yale to Sphinx, to earless to ears large enough to be worn as clothing, to faces drawn on headless chests. A digitally reproduced Hereford on the left favors an afterlife just beyond the medieval bestiary in the world's lower right edge. Likewise, in the right Psalter, dragons threaten the impious with eternal damnation. Figurations of sea monsters and maps evolved to represent terra incognita, or land unknown, which grew beyond the visible horizon and subsequently vanished in modern maps. The top corner of the Hereford depicts the Last Judgment, with the righteous shuffling off the left, the damned towards Africa and Mesopotamia, and Christ at the center. The bottom left corner shows Augustus Caesar's commission of geographers to assemble a complete account of the world before Christ's birth. At the lower right, a squire calls out to his master on horseback, pass avant, or pass forward to the afterlife. The artist has anchored the mortal world with thongs containing the letters mors, or death, making the map itself a memento mori. Medieval maps represent historical fatalities of communities imagined through language. The image of the mostly German Ebsdorf map on the left depicts the world contained by Christ's body with hands and feet emerging from the sides, demonstrating his involvement with humanity and the world. The Royal Associations of Mappamundi also inscribe Christian and empire-centric power directly into individual bodies through emphases on Latin, German, and French. Map of Nowhere on the right makes visible and porous cultural differences created by language that separate human and other in historical maps. British artist and 2003 Turner Prize winner Grayson Perry uses his own experiences with trauma and psychotherapy to displace Christ's body with his own and Kat's bodies in Map of Nowhere. Perry drew the 5 feet tall 30-plate etching over the course of 6 months in late 2007, early 2008. His face, framed on top, looks pensively and martyr-like onto the body of lakes, rivers, and islands. In the center of the map, subjects travel on a pilgrimage toward a caged figure on an island of doubt, from which a promenade, known as uncertainty, reaches across the limits of Perry's figure. In order to describe Perry's bodily networks that resist traditional maps, I make use of what Deleuze calls transversal. In a spatial turn toward cartography, Transversal invokes maps and diagrams that intend new and different histories by giving an account of what has come before. These artworks imagine a future unlike the present, one of shared sensations and events, as histories of becoming more and other. Map of Nowhere is a self-surveillance of Perry's embodiment of human subjective belief. In this detail, Perry's alter ego and drag persona, St. Clair, extends her 10-pronged divining rod, the system, toward a tribesman holding a spear on the far left, or powers that be, and finally terminates at the establishment. Beneath this scene, lodged between the image of Perry's cat's tail on the left and his own leg, are representations of rape, alcoholism, and the wedding industry. Just right of Satan's ear on either side of Perry's left leg, 3 buildings house domestic violence, macho, bigoted average man, and abandoned children. Perry isolates these points of tension by deploying between his legs a surveyor's triangular compass. The end opens to reveal a monastic temple, lit against a dark sky by a ray of light originating from his anus. Perry narrates across Western memory's spectrality, conjuring its history from behind. He conflates images of religious and cultural pilgrimage and a Western backgrounding of ethnocentric origins. Map of Nowhere creates meaning by intertwining histories of Perry's own and other backgrounds. It gives an account of the social and material conditions of the emergence of maps and the act of perceiving them, which depends on the arrival of Perry's own as well as not his own body. Perry highlights the cultural indeterminacy of maps that represent a disjointed Western culture through smooth scientific measurement. Map of Nowhere names one territory just above Perry's right forearm, inauthenticity, and pairs it with a miniature reflexology diagram. Just above his wrist, a tumorous mass, including corporate and the sideways domed capital, instant gratification, swells to join his arm to the map's frame. The image of this tumescence draws tensions between the working class and an exploited free market, new world economy. Just below the same arm, in the far right territories, Perry mimics medieval bestiaries of his progenitors. He displaces exotic bodies with established modern ideologies: personal freedom, unforgiving, tax, and asylum seeker. Perry goes on to critique bigotry and turbo-consumerism in the framed infantile body schema diagram with fear at the stomach center. Perry mocks complicit national and sexual identities through the global sports franchise, beer and football in the left and right testicles. In the bladder, he inscribes porn subsidiaries belonging to telephone companies in the left ear region. In the lower right corner, just outside the circle, Perry replaces the promise of an afterlife with a mere word, nowhere. Map of Nowhere makes visible cultural indeterminacies of medieval mapping techniques in the modern context of capitalist empire. Perry's use of the compass questions how the West came to exert such dominance in the corporate and government branding of national landscapes and identities. Diagrams from 18th century France represent burgeoning French nationalism just prior to the First Republic. Writers of the Enlightenment L'Encyclopédie, Diderot and D'Alembert, among others, were mostly Christian. The 35-volume work is significant for its inclusion of over 3,100 diagrammatic and scientific plates. In these 3 diagrams, bodies appear in fragments and vanish to reveal muscles, bones, and circulatory systems just beneath the outer layers of skin. The less shaded hand and foot in the 2 left purpose diagrams see through whiteness as a catalog property, falsely transcendent and easily made transparent. The 2 left purpose diagrams correlate with the far right anatomy through dichotomies of surface interior, orientation, cognition. Enlightenment reason furthered empire's division into nations as well as divisions between mind and body. L'Encyclopédie elides white racial history by backgrounding whiteness as transparent. It turns history into what Sarah Ahmed writes is, quote, given in its sensuous certainty as if it were the property of an object, end quote. Catalog properties of whiteness inscribed by Enlightenment vision collapse material whiteness and white racial history, impacting white subjects' capacities to narrate their own histories through embodied encounters with the ravaged landscape. French installation artist Annette Messager uses diagrams to narrate geographies of embodiment. In my trophies, networks rather than nations pervade life everywhere, in neurons, veins, roots, rivers, and satellites. Converging in the folds are ancestors, labor, traveling, and turning keys. She inscribes the hand on the right with rhythms of hand-tilling earth, while the left depicts eruptions of flesh memory and built landscape. Red paint runs down like blood or lava. In feet diagrams, transversal wanderings manifest encounters among human, animal, and other worlds. On the left, Messager morphs dismembered limbs into proto-creatures. Scissors cut across central pathways, which dissolve into unseen dimensions between folds of flesh. Messager describes this deepening of folds as an exorcism. Eschewing Western science's surface-interior division, My Trophies orients bodies and worlds through displacements of touch and vision, sense and nonsense. The sacred mandala in the left heel operates through synesthesis, cross-referencing sensory dimensions in a disjointed narrative of encounters. The right foot remembers a landscape, recalled through involuntary synesthetic response. Messager makes porous the limits of orientation and cognition by picturing embodied place as simultaneity of landscape and flesh memory. Both contemporary artists narrate their own and other histories as retroactive resistances to nation, empire, whiteness, and otherness. In Western maps and diagrams, Perry and Messager dissolve flesh and land into what Deleuze and Guattari call the compound of sensation. This ambiguous house represents the movement between self and cosmos that Deleuze and Elizabeth Grosz argue is the basis of all artistic creation. Ahmed writes, "What passes through history is not only the work done by generations, but the sedimentation of that work as the condition of arrival for future generations." While Western historical encyclopedic maps and diagrams of times past attempt to replace or void other histories, Perry and Messager intend the present as a future past contingency. Both artists ground material histories as networked bodily functions. Their transversal power extends across immaterial language and into spatiotemporal dimensions that connect flesh and land. Map of Nowhere and My Trophies treat bodies as sites of resistance, inscribing them with life-giving forms that imagine the greatest openness of new and other possible worlds in which to act, make, do, and differ. Thank you.